She Could Be My Daughter is a program that focuses on domestic violence and against Black women in our community, sex trafficking and other abuse and things that a lot of us kind of don't discuss in the Black community, pedophilia and other things of that nature. And unfortunately, here in Sacramento, we have a big problem, a big issue when it comes to incidents dealing with Black women, especially Black women that are due to have violent encounters with whether it's Black men or other individuals. And a lot of those stories get swept under the rug. So when I met Chiffon and heard about the story about her daughter, Taylor Blackwell, not only was it my duty as a father to do something, but for me, I was in shock as a community activist, being in tune with the community, not knowing and hearing this story secondhand by a good friend of mine that called me from actually Miami and kind of was like, hey, this is something like you need to get involved with. I don't know what's happening. But because Trey Songz, I guess, reposted something that she said, Taylor Blackwell's mom, and the kids that are friends with Taylor Blackwell, of course, helped expose it to the masses. And I think that's kind of where it really generated that idea. It wasn't the interest because Trey Songz did, but it was like how my friend found out in Miami, who does news out there locally, and then was kind of like, this is happening in Sac. I don't know if you're, in tune. And I totally wasn't in tune, didn't hear anything. And that speaks volumes to the story within itself. When you hear about it, it doesn't make any sense. It questions a lot of things for me, how we handle with Black women and the deaths of Black women in this community of Sacramento. How you go from February 28th, 2020, you hear nothing, and to where we're now in July 28th, 5 months, and still we have no clue on how she died. That to me speaks absolute volumes, and it doesn't really shed light onto who Taylor Blackwell was. It almost seems as if this girl was some aimless, troubled soul that no one cared for, but that's far from the truth.
Mm-hmm. So you brought up a good point that it's been 5 months and we still don't know what's going on. And I know you're serving as the spokesperson for Chiffon and Taylor's family and friends. Is there any information that you can share about, any details that have been provided to Chiffon as far as Taylor's case goes?
We can tell you where the next action is going to be for justice for Taylor Blackwell, but I can't tell you any information on what happened, who did it, who done it, what was the course of what took place in that hotel room. No videos, nothing. And that, again, speaks volumes to us as a community acting in a sense of urgency. Before, you have the post that went viral, you had a community that had no idea who Taylor Blackwell was. No idea about the Taylor Blackwell story, the tragic end to Taylor's 19-year-old life, a college student at Sierra College, vice president of the BSU at Sierra College. You literally had nobody talking about it. Mm-hmm. And where I came in was to help the family and help Taylor's mother, gravitate in a way to where, one, they see the community really cares. Two, it makes more people talk about Taylor Blackwell's story. And three, put pressure on individuals and organizations to say something and do something. But until we were really on the streets, activating in our activism, organizing and committing and having these actions where a lot of Taylor's friends, AKA the Team Taylor Made, have now really become voices for Taylor. And all I've done was hone that young energy, show them how to operate, and of course, mobilize our community and spread light into this situation. A situation I think that all of us really should be concerned about. One of the things that I look at in this situation that is glaring outside of us not getting information, where Taylor's area code of where she lived at. Her area code in South Sacramento would be different than somebody area code, and maybe Land Park, the Fab 40s as we know it here in Sacramento and East Sacramento. So I look at that, and I think it tailors into why we are still 5 months without answers, because of her area code. She's subjected to the unfortunate, profile or stereotype and biases that we constantly have in certain communities, that her life really didn't really matter. I mean, she lives in South Sac, so who cares? She's a black girl that probably shouldn't have did or shouldn't have been in a hotel room, and that was probably her fault. And that's kind of the nonchalant behavior. Not saying that's what they're saying, but that's what they're projecting in the untimeliness that we have to continue in the last, few some weeks, but probably 4 weeks, pretty much the whole month, having an action and an action and an action, having a whole now media outlets taking on the story when nobody wanted to touch the story February 28th. Nobody wanted to touch the story in March. Nobody wanted to touch the story in April. Nobody wanted to touch the story in May. So this kind of, to me, I will say again, speaks volumes to how Black women are protected here in Sacramento, and how we so oftentimes, look past a story of a Black woman who possibly could have been killed, who possibly had a horrific accident, how we will focus more on a Black male getting killed by the police in an unjust, unwarranted way, compared to a 19-year-old Black healthy girl who goes into a hotel room alive, and she's then pushed out on a stretcher dead. I throw my hands up, because it's almost embarrassing how long the information has taken to come out, and they've given us absolutely nothing. And I want to believe that just now, as we started applying the pressure, having multiple actions where we've shut down multiple streets and renamed them Taylor Blackwell Boulevard, Taylor Blackwell Road, Taylor Blackwell Street, as we now have the Taylor Blackwell Inn in the same place where she passed away, our latest action that we just did yesterday, that we're just making sure that folks know who she is, and we're asking what happened. Again, it just speaks volumes to the lack of urgency and the irresponsibility, I think, that both SAC PD and the coroner's office, where each one is just deflecting information, saying, call this one, and a lot of public officials in our community not standing up and stepping up and saying, hey, there's something needs to be done.
So can you tell me about what other actions do you have coming up?
Oh man, that's the element of surprise. That's the element of surprise, young lady. Just like they don't tell us nothing, we're not gonna tell them nothing. I think they're surprised each and every time. I think I've gotten calls from SAC PD the first initial times, and I simply said, well, I can't give you answers if we don't get any answers. And where we pop up is where we pop up, and what we do is what we do. The beautiful part about this team, Taylor Made, these great young advocates of change and justice and accountability, and to create the true story of what defines Taylor. Taylor was a fighter, right? Taylor was a young lady that was loved by her community, was loved by her family, was definitely loved by her friends. And you can feel that in the way they support her. It's almost like the spirit of her is in so many of these great young leaders who have stepped up in a very uncomfortable place, and a place where, ironically, they had to kind of watch the nation, right? They had to watch the nation start supporting and rallying behind George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and other victims of whether it's police brutality or on white supremacy. They've had to watch that, and this is in other countries, other states, other cities. But right here in Sacramento, they were baffled by how no one, until now, was galvanizing them or cultivating them to be able to support the efforts to say what happened to Taylor Blackwell, to get justice for their dearest friend, their sister, their cousin, their niece. And I think being in that moment where they were probably on the ground protesting, being confused why there were so many activists and a full-on action and support for people like George Floyd, but here down in the hometown, there was absolute silence. And for me, as working with youth as in my mentorship program, and of course having, she could be my daughter, I just felt that who would I be as not only a father, stepping into my father's shoes first, to not help support efforts when I know these young people, this mother, don't really know how to galvanize or collectively push a story the way I know how to do it, because I've had so many years of experience. How would I look like sitting on the bench and saying, well, they can kind of figure it out, or trying to deflect the responsibility and say, well, you know what, this is probably police officers because COVID-19, they probably got a lot going on. There's a lot of homicides happening in Sacramento, so give them an opportunity. No. If this is an open shut case, open and shut it. Don't have us continuing to dwell, continuing to wait. Give the right answers. And they haven't given the right answers, nor have they supported the family and friends in a way they should have. They've dropped the ball. Their negligence shows, it's foolproof right in our eyes. And my frustration and my anger, because I'm hoping that they have some type of explanation to how she died if it was an accidental death. But let's go and say she got murdered. How much time have we given those who could have been involved to kind of figure out their situation? That to me is scary, because as I've said before, that means that the killer is still on the loose. And we all know that Taylor was with somebody. We all know she was with somebody. And to hear that somebody wasn't interrogated, I don't want to put these things out there because I don't want to create this rumor mill, but it just to me doesn't add up. I think that if there was something that was okay, open and closed, they would have said something. But if it turns into something else, it's going to be really unfortunate. And just goes into the same model and the idea of why we say defund the police. Reallocate resources so we can have other folks that are following and investigating cases like this that are important to our community moving forward, that are going to handle this as if it was their own children, So reallocate those funds so we can get, better equipped people to handle these kind of situations.
And ultimately, why do you think it's important for the community to really get behind these efforts with the actions and supporting Team Taylor Made?
I believe because it's going to happen again. Unfortunately, we haven't come to a place to where we're doing enough to prevent these situations from happening. And even in a situation of prevention, by educating our young people on who you're dealing with and where you're going, and keep yourself surrounded by folks that have good intentions for your life, not ill intentions for your life, as well as making sure you're communicating, right? Communicating at all times, especially if you feel, awkward about where you're at or who you're with. So, the unfortunate part will be here again. Mm-hmm. And if we are here again, we need to make sure that if another family has to go through this tremendous heartbreak, that we're there immediately supporting them through the heartbreak. Because I can't imagine what Chiffon was going through. She's such a warrior. One of the blessings about this, if there can be some kind of, positive to this, is not only have I now got some new nieces and nephews from some of the young people on the ground that have been standing, as I said, Team Tailor Made. But I've been able to get a sister out of this as we've gone closer and we've connected and getting to learn, you know, about Taylor Blackwell, her personality, who she was. It's like I'm missing a niece at this particular time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the blessing underlined in the tragedy. But here's the thing. If we don't keep on exposing that our Black women are not protected, I think it's like a nationally, there's like over 500 Black girls that have died in the hands of Black men. And I'm not saying that this is a situation like that, but that speaks volumes, right? And we have to, for me as a father, I want to know that my daughter is safe. I want to know both of them are safe. I want to know my nieces. I want to know my mentees that I love and I support. I want to know that they are in a safe community. And I think that if we don't stand up, we don't say nothing, folks will think that it's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and do this and, you know, no one's going to catch me. No, we have to make sure we derail the attitude and the thinking that any crime on Black women is just going to be a pass. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
Not on my watch. It won't be a pass. If you're committing a crime against a Black woman, you are going to be met with as much force as if it was a crime against a Black man by the hands of the police. And that's my attitude, and that's a lot of communities' attitude as well. We're not going to take this sitting down. We're fully in support of her, of the family and the friends and Team Tailor Made, and making their waves and finding some way that they, after this is all said and done, can cope with the loss of beautiful Taylor Blackwell. Like, we don't even look at that part. We're looking at the fight part. We're looking at the get the justice part. But you still have to understand, as a community, we'll heal, we'll bounce back. But what about the family and friends?
Mm-hmm.
We haven't even took into accountability that those are the ones that we're fighting for because they deserve the closure. And those are the ones that are going to have the anniversaries, that are going to have the birthdays, they're going to remember the moments during the holidays, are going to remember the moments in a classroom, going to remember the moments at a sleepover, or look at the last text message, or go look at a post. They have to deal with coping and moving forward. And that, to me, is the hardest part. I think them fighting right now, it almost gives them a sense that Taylor's still with them. Right? Mm-hmm. So almost this is like therapeutic in a way. But after this is all said and done, and when we finally get the kind of closure or the information we need to move forward or stop what we're doing, there's a whole lot of healing that has to be done. And that's going to be the hardest part of the work that we're doing. This part is easy to me. The part of how do we move forward and start healing and reclaiming, you know, who they are, because Taylor's loss for a community, we lost a bright star that could have probably impacted our community, is impacting our community through death. But what the family and friends lose, that to me, I can't, no words can describe that loss. And I am not going to even attempt to do that, but I just watch how they fight on the ground, how they're so focused, how they're laser focused, and they're so fearless. Like, they don't care because they want the answers, and that speaks volumes.
Mm-hmm. So what do you want from Sacramento, the Sacramento Police Department and the Sacramento County Coroner's Office?
I want them to care. I want them to care about a Black 19-year-old girl who had all her life to live. I want them to act like this is their child, this is their daughter. I want them to forget about her area code, where she's from. I want them to not have a bias. I want them to feel like this family needs justice. I want them to make a statement that Black women will be protected here in Sacramento. Black women's lives matter here in Sacramento. I mean, we want that. But in a perfect world, I want a lot more things. And I don't think we're just going to get it. And again, it speaks volumes to leadership. You know, the mayor of Sacramento, he did make a statement, Mayor Steinberg, and we do appreciate that. But I don't think that there's enough, you know, public officials speaking to the lack there of accountability to our coroner's office and our PD. Like I told a friend the other day, there's a lot of stuff that SAC PD ain't doing wrong. So don't feel like this is not the one right now. You're going to find some stuff, right? And here is one of the things, the negligence. And maybe it's not negligence, right? Maybe, as one of the officers said, we're being overworked. And if you're being overworked, spread that work to others who can do the work. Because I think this investigation has gone too long. We're on pins and needles trying to figure out what is going to be the actual results. And we just want people to start caring, you know. Let's start caring. Let's start investing the things that we need to help these young girls. And the cool thing about it, it's like Taylor Blackwell wasn't a lost girl. You know what I mean? I mean, she was an average young teenage girl. And that doesn't have to have a color on it. So, you know, she was going to a predominantly white college. She didn't go to, you know, CRC. She didn't go over to Sac City. She decided to go to, you know, Sierra College, which is some miles away from where she lives in South Sacramento. She was about to go to a historical black college in Texas. Everything was lined up. So for the end result to be death at 19, and we have no clue, myself, community, family, mother, we will not stand and say, okay, we are fighting for justice for Taylor Blackwell. We will not accept that as your ultimate answer. We won't. And for those people that are being inconvenienced and feel uncomfortable as we shut down streets from here all the way down to the police station, to South Sac, so be it. It is what it is. But we know that if it was your daughter, you would be fighting in the same capacity. Because no one can sit there and explain or tell a person how to fight for their child. This is what a mother is supposed to do. This is what we're supposed to do as a community. We're supposed to stand and fight when we hear and we feel things ain't right. And the reason why we fighting is because we don't feel things are right. If things were right, if there was some attention to this story as it needed during the times it was fresh, we had to reinvent it. We had to like relaunch it. It's almost like she died in early July compared to her dying in February. That's how much we had to restart it. That's how many people have come to us and said, what happened to Taylor Blackwell? She died in a hotel. Y'all don't got no answers? Everybody I talk to says the same exact thing. How don't you guys have any answers in 5 months later? Before, how do you have no answers 4 months later? So it ain't us that's crazy. It's the system of how we decide and we pick and choose what is going to be in a category of urgency and what we're going to put in a category of non-emergency.
Well, I think those are all of my questions. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think is important to say?
I just, what happened in Taylor Blackwell, call your coroners, call your city council, call the chief of police. We want answers. We want answers fast. We want answers now. And, thank you for all the community and thank you for all the folks that have now become that advocate, and to push for justice for Taylor Blackwell. And of course, shouts out to Team Taylor Made.